I became one of the youngest female millionaires in the world, and I have learned a lot in that journey and in that process, and it has been quite a ride. And so today I wanted to share some of the things that I've kind of learned along the way, because I know a lot of you are gonna get there too. I know there's some people who are already there and maybe feel like they can't relate because nobody ever talks about these things. And everyone makes it seem like this is just so much glitz and glamour and you get all this glory and praise and it's wonderful and you can get whatever you want. It's like, that's not the case. And there's a lot of things that are on the line. I just wanna kind of cover some of them. And some of them I may not even really have listed, but it may just come to mind. So we're gonna get into it. If you don't know me, my name is Kelly OG, and I'm probably the biggest secret you've never heard of, but you have now, so you should probably like search me up or follow or subscribe or just say hi. Okay, let's get into it. So first thing is you're gonna feel great because you made it to a level that nobody else did, which is a great thing and it should be celebrated. But that does not mean that you should look at yourself as better than anyone else. Now, I've seen this happen a lot of times. There's that luxury girl era. There's that, oh, look at me, I can buy Birkin bags and I can travel the world and I can buy this thing, and like, that's great. Like, I think that's awesome and I think that's amazing. And I think that's literally what we work so hard for, is to enjoy the things that we love. But what I want you to understand is that it doesn't matter, because who you are today may not be who you are tomorrow, and who you were yesterday is not who you are today. Because we all have a story, right? There was a time where you had nothing, you had to work really hard. You remember the nights where you barely got sleep to get to where you are. And there are people today who are doing that same thing. And so if you now discredit someone because they don't have more money than you, because they're still in a place where they're still trying to get somewhere, what you're doing is, it doesn't matter what your financial status is, your status as a person has become bottom of the barrel, because you don't value people as if they're people, you value them as if they're objects. And that goes as far as looking at people as what they can do for you. If this person isn't this person, or if they can't give me connections here, then I'm not gonna entertain them, I'm not gonna talk to them. Oh, this person was hired for a specific job, so I'm just not going to treat them any more than that specific job. And that can get a little tricky, so we'll get into that later. But you shouldn't look at people as, hey, this is what you are, and I'm gonna put you there based on where I believe your socioeconomic status is, because it doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't help you in the long run, because one day you might need that person, and you'd be very, very shocked when the person that you need the most is the person who you discredited and you dismissed the most. So don't do that. Now let's get on to number two. The second thing, if you are in a male-dominated industry, then this is one you're really gonna relate to, because that's what I am, right? So I'm in an industry that surrounds finance, surrounds education, which isn't really male-dominated, but when you're talking about finance, yeah, that's the man's playing field. That's their baseball field, their football field, their basketball field, and Wall Street of all Wall Street. If you're in a male-dominated industry, then there are two things that you're highly going to struggle with. There's one, men falling for you because they either think you're cute or they just fall in love with your intellect because you are a very smart person. If you are a woman who's gotten into a male-dominated industry, then people are gonna be like, whoa, you did something most people don't do. That's huge, and it should be celebrated. And some men see that as far as, wow, you're a woman who actually is striving for something, and not, you know, in this social stage of life, a lot of people, especially if you're a woman in your 20s, it's probably just the time we want to enjoy life, and that's fine. But a lot of men, they see a woman as, she's gonna be the woman that's gonna stay at home and take care of the kids, and I'm gonna work. So when they see a woman doing it, they're like, whoa. So that's the first thing, is they fall in love with that. If they don't fall for you, then they're either going to do one that's kind of the most annoying, but discredit you entirely. They're gonna be like, you don't understand how hard it is to get here. You know, whenever you've described to a man that you watch basketball, you know, I kind of like the Warriors, and like the Warriors, you're not even a real Warriors fan, you just like Steph Curry, and you're like, I mean, he is one of the greatest players of all time. And they're like, well, okay, yeah? You know about greatest players of all time? Tell me who the assistant coach was to the Detroit Pistons in 1942. And you're like, what? How am I, you don't even know that answer, right? So that is kind of how it is you either get hit on too much or discredited entirely. It just becomes very skewed, because there are people who keep it strictly platonic, but you always kind of wonder in your head, if the opportunity presented itself, are you only being nice to me because you like me, or are you genuinely just a friend? And so when you get older, obviously I'll be older in a couple years, I'll be 30 in like 9 years. But you know, as you get older into your 30s and 40s, then you understand that, okay, people are going to be married and people are gonna have kids. So it's a little bit more serious, but you still deal with it. And I don't know this from personal experience, because I'm not in my 30s and 40s, but I know it because I watch a lot of shows, and I believe shows are based off some sort of actual factual information. But hey, it's my personal opinion. So those are the two things. I don't want you to feel guilty for it. Sometimes you may actually fall for them. You may like them, because here's the thing, you have a lot in common. You're both in similar industries, you both are very ambitious, you both have a drive, right? And so sometimes you kind of click with them and you're like, hey, you're a cool person. But you have to make sure that there is a very, very fine line between what is and what isn't, and a very, very fine line between relationship and business, because when those get mixed up, it gets very, very tricky. Also, another thing that you want to make sure of is that even if this is something you want to turn into a more romantic relationship, whatever it is, you want to ensure that you have a friendship with that person beforehand. And sorry to all the men that are watching me film this video right now, but men often don't lead with emotions the same way we as women do, where we actually will like somebody before we pursue something with them. Sometimes they just like something on you, and so they want to move forward with that. And you want to make sure that you're not going in with a kind heart and they're just going in with a temporary brain because they're just like, you look good, right? So let's make sure in our decision making, we're putting actual love before actual lust, both ways, right? Not saying men are bad, not saying women are bad, but we're just people. Third thing is, just because you made $1 million does not mean that you have to go and spend it to look like it. You could make $1 million, you could make 10 million, you could make 100 million, right? But I don't want you to be the person that goes, oh my gosh, I made $1 million, I'm going to Cartier and I'm getting every single watch and every single bracelet and every single ring that they have to offer. And I'm going to Louis V and I'm getting every single bag that I can get because everybody loves the monogram bags. And then you say, I'm going to go to Hermes because I need to buy every item in the store so they can invite me to buy a Birkin, because if I'm in the Birkin club, I'm in the exclusive club, and I need to make sure that everything I have on me is always designer, and they need to know that this shirt was $17,000. When you actually know you walk the walk, you talk the talk, the most beautiful thing in the world is how you treat people. It's how you act. It's not how you look. Frankly, I don't care how you look. And the thing is, DHgate, Temu, so many different brands are blowing up because all they do is sell fake stuff, right? They sell fake designer, they sell fake watches, they sell fake shoes, they sell fake purses, which I know a lot of Birkins. A lot of you guys know what I'm talking about. We'll keep it a secret. You don't have to tell anybody else, right? But a lot of those things are going to be things that people look at and they're like, oh my gosh, I need people to know that I'm her, so I have to wear this thing. And I'm right there with you. You know, I obviously indulge just a tiny bit. I spoil myself every once in a blue moon. I don't really, I'm kind of a stay-at-home type of person, but every once in a while when I realize, oh, I do have an event I have to go to, I do need to show that, hey, I am doing something a little bit, then yes, I will wear something kind of okay. Shout out to my girl Vanessa, but I spent way too much money on the Chanel that I'm wearing right now. And I'll be honest with you, it has done nothing for me. I mean, I could have gotten this at Ross, I could have gotten this at Zara, I could have gotten it at Abercrombie, which they sell really nice clothes for very, very reasonable prices. Like this at Abercrombie would have probably been like $75, right? And not the surplus amount that I spent in Chanel. If you're hearing this and you ever want to sponsor me, just act like I never said your name. But I just want to say that because like this doesn't do anything for me. If you see me wearing this, doesn't mean anything. So don't go spending a bunch of your money on clothes that are super expensive to feel like this is your calling into this exclusive class. Like I want you to remember and celebrate the fact that you made $1 million. Like that's awesome. And that's all you needed to enter that class. You never actually needed to buy all the expensive things, but you can, you know, gift yourself and celebrate yourself. Just don't go overboard to please other people, because at the end of the day, when they go to sleep, they're not there like, oh my gosh, I literally saw Mary with that Birkin bag. I really need that Birkin bag. How did she? Nobody is there like sleeping and dreaming and losing sleep over the fact that you were successful. They are all worrying about their own problems and their rent and their bills and whether or not their boyfriend's talking to another girl. And hopefully that's not the case, but that's what people are worried about, and they're not worried about you. So I want you to remember that and not put yourself at the forefront or on the pinnacle of everyone's minds, because that's just not the case. You made $1 million, I want you to celebrate it, but I don't want you to bask in it to remind people that you did it, because it actually cheapens your value versus making it 10 times more of what you're trying to make. Was that number 4?
I think that was number 3.
That was number 3. That was number 3. Sorry, guys. You know, I was just going. I'm sorry. Number 4, the actual number 4, is one that I have actually struggled with a lot, because I found that as I was working so hard and so hard and so hard, and you know, being that homebody that always stays at home and is just working, I was like, wait a second. I don't have any girlfriends around me that relate. And especially being in a male-dominated industry, like the thing that you're gonna get around you is just a lot of guy friends. And then I was like, I'm not trying to be the girl with a lot of guy friends. I'm not. We don't want to do that, and like I love all my guy friends, but like that's just not the look that we want to have, right? And so I was trying to find, like, I was just like, I need more girlfriends around me. Like I need people who relate to me more. I don't want my life to be surrounded by work. I just want to travel with my girlfriends and not just like alone sometimes, or just with my team, which I love them, but you know, sometimes you just want to enjoy. And I found a couple things that I've come to terms with over the past couple years that made me realize, like, oh, okay, this is not just a me thing, and this is not a very rare thing. So 1, it is not uncommon to not have a lot of girlfriends, because here's what I found. The people who were with you before you blew up, or you became very successful, or before you became who you are people that support you. and they support you genuinely, and they love you for it, and they'll hang out with you every single day, and it's awesome, right? But you do also find that some of those friends that came up with you, and even some friends that you will meet in the future, will start to grow resentment. And you will also start to grow like you can't relate, because what you start to deem as important because you're building something important, they may just deem as, hey, right now I'm still trying to figure myself out. I'm still stepping into my me era, my single era, like whatever it is. They're stepping into that area of their life, whether it's a growing era, a changing era, whatever it is. And so I don't want you to feel like there's a problem with you if you can't find that. And I also don't want you to be upset with them if they do start to build resentment, because sometimes it's just difficult to be in a position where you were trying to grow something and you're just surrounded by somebody who already has it. And so for some people it's inspiring, and for other people it's hurtful and it's difficult and they hate it and they just can't do it, right? So I want you to support people in any way. You know, you're usually gonna have those friends that I like to call them the easy for you. They like to say, well, that's easy for you to say, that's easy for you to do, and when you find yourself being surrounded by those friends, I would say distance, because they have, what was internal, they have now outwardly projected, like, this is what I've been thinking. And you want people around you who are uplifting you, who are praying for you, who want you to be successful, and you are reciprocating, because we don't use people, mutually beneficial, and you want that to be the case so that now you have actual friendships that are fruitful, that produce good things. We don't want them to be a case of like, I don't know, you're ending up with heartbreak every single day because you're going through all these friendship breakups and you feel like you can't relate with the people you thought you could relate with. So every era is meant for a given time, and I believe that with God, He will always bring good people in your life that are supposed to be in your life. And sometimes when people aren't there, it's just because it's not their season. So that is number 4. We're getting on to number 5, guys. We're going on a roll here, but I hope you're interested. Number 5, right? You will deal with what I like to call the forgot your wallet syndrome. This is what will happen. You'll go on a date with a guy. It's a 5-star date. It's an amazing date. You're in love with this date. You're like, wow, this guy's an upstanding man. And then when it's time to pay this check, I mean, he's telling you order whatever you want. It's a man's, don't even worry about it. The world is your oyster. If you want, get 17 oysters, 18 oysters. Just order as many oysters. And you're there and you're just going crazy, or you're not because it's the first date, whatever. And the bill comes and all of a sudden he's like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how I drove here. I forgot my wallet. When I tell you this has happened to me too many times, I'm like, how do I fall for it every time? So I just, maybe we need to start doing like screenings. Like, can you please send me a wallet? Or maybe we send a check like, hey, don't forget your wallet. But then that sounds like, oh, so you want him to pay. And you don't want to give off like, I want you to pay, but he's supposed to pay. But yeah, so there are men who will take you on dates because they do see you and they know that you're a woman of value. And then they will say, I forgot my wallet. Because they just wanted a chance with you and they're like, maybe she'll forgive me and next time I'll be able to work enough shifts so that I can actually afford her. Or you'll end up with a text message 2 days later that says, you know what, I just need to make more money so that I can take care of you, because men have this inflated sense of, in order to give a woman who makes this much money the life she wants, I need to make 10 times more than her, when in actuality, that's not the case. Like, there are women who feel like they are above a man because they've done so, but let's not be that woman. What we want to be is a woman who still respects a man, who still understands. Well, in my culture, we are more traditional. So still, no matter how much money you make as a woman, you still have to cook for your man and clean up after the house and take care of your children and, just be a woman, and he still does what he can do. But men, if you're watching this, if you're caring to know how a woman thinks, I also want you to remember that a woman will tell you exactly what she wants. So you don't have to feel like you need to take her on these 5-star dinners every day and first-class flights just because she makes a lot. She may be like, listen, I just want McDonald's, but I care about the fact that you care about me, and I see you're working towards something, and that's all that matters, right? So just want to put that out there. Now, the second thing that relates to the forget your wallet syndrome happens a lot with friends. And this is what happens is you will go out to eat and all of a sudden the server comes up or whoever it is and they're like, is this together or separate? And then they just start doing this on their phone. They start looking around because suddenly they just forgot their glasses and they can't see, or they're looking for the hidden whatever in the closet. It's just, they just look all around and everybody's quiet. And you're there like, I'm the friend with money, so I am supposed to take care. Okay. They suddenly forgot their wallet. They didn't say they forgot their wallet, but there's so much silence that you understand that they're not gonna pay. And now this is a little awkward because nobody's speaking. And you're like, okay, I know I can afford this. Maybe they can't afford it at the moment and they don't wanna say so I'm just gonna pay for it. But I do think it's a little foul and a little messed up that you don't wanna just tell me beforehand or something like that. And most friends that are genuinely a friend do not care how much money you have and they will pay for themselves. I had so many friends that are awesome that'll be like, Kelly, you're not spending a dime. You spend a dime on everybody. I don't care. get whatever you want, I'll pay for it. I don't care if I don't have the money, just do it. Like this is me blessing you for everything you do to other people. And I'm like, oh, that's so sweet. And then I've had some friends that like just, they disappear. And they don't want to do anything unless you're paying for it. They don't want to go anywhere unless you're paying for it. Anytime you do go somewhere, they suddenly don't have the money for it. And at some point you have to use the discernment to be like, this is a friend that makes sense, or this isn't a friend that makes sense. And if they're not, you gotta kind of let them go for the time being. So make sure you're aware of the forget your wallet syndrome, because there are a lot of people, unfortunately, who struggle with it, but there is a cure for it. And it's just being able to know the environments that you should put yourself in. If you know you can't afford something or someone, just don't go. And also be honest, because there are people who genuinely like, well, I never cared about your money. I thought you were a cool person. You made me laugh, and like, I don't care. Because there's a thing us women know that a lot of men don't realize is a lot of men lead with their money. So they say all girls are gold diggers, but then they flex their money all over Instagram, and they make sure you see every single designer label that they're wearing. And they make sure to tell you anything you want, I'll buy it. Let me send you money for your nails. And so they lead with money. And then when they attract money, they're like, well, how did I attract money? So when you are a woman who's with a man who also has money, a lot of times they haven't actually built what it is to be able to take care of a woman, because they just thought, I just have to throw money at her. And when you don't want that, they're like, what am I supposed to do? So the richest man isn't always the best option. But let's get to our next thing. I believe we're on number 6. We're on number 6. This is something that I had to learn the hard way. And I was trying not to come to terms with, but like I eventually had to come to terms with, is the fact that it is incredibly hard to be the boss or the overseer or the manager of a man. If a man works for you, it is very difficult for them to be able to be like, there's a woman that is telling me what to do. There's no way. And one thing that I learned was that a man's aggression is a woman's emotion. So in business, where men can be more aggressive and they can cuss another dude out and it's like, you better do this, you better do that. If a woman was to do the same thing, they're like, oh my gosh, she's being emotional. Why is she going crazy? Like, who let this woman do this? Why would they do that, right? And so when that becomes a thing, it causes people to kind of pull back. I want you guys to understand that men do lead with a bit of ego, because they are supposed to be the provider, the protector, and so they need to hold themselves to a very high regard. They need to be like, I am that man. So their ego does serve them benefit in a lot of circumstances. But when it comes to listening to a woman, they're like, this isn't what I'm used to. You know, I'm not used to a woman telling me to do this. And who does she think? She thinks I'm less of a man because she can tell me what to do and she can order me here, order me there. And I'm not saying you should ever be aggressive. Sometimes you gotta put your foot down in business, and you do have to tell them like, no, you cannot do that. And then they're like, well, do you think you're my mom? And you're like, I'm not your mom. I'm just, you know, and if a man was to tell them you cannot do that, they'd be like, sorry, bro, I won't do it again. I want you to understand that it is not your fault. And sometimes, honestly, the truth is that you may just need a male buffer that gets in the way. There may be somebody on your team and their main goal is just, hey, you may be the chief operating officer, or you may be the operations manager, or you may just be the buffer, you know, whatever you'd like to call them. I don't know, you can call them a buffer, you can call them the middleman without using the word middleman, whatever you deem it best as. But what you do want to make sure of is that you have somebody who's there. And I've talked to several men in business about this, and I'm like, am I just crazy? Because I didn't say anything wrong, and now he's upset and he's doing this, and they're like, no, Kelly, it's just as men, we can't do that. And so sometimes you do need a man that's gonna talk. So what I started doing is I was like, okay, I just say, hey, Manny, can you go tell Peter to please not do this. And when Manny tells Peter, Peter comes back, he's like, no problem, bro. But when I tell Peter, he's like, oh, you always get on me, you always. And I'm like, no, I just want you to be better, you know, because you're a part of the team and we work together to grow this amazing thing that we're building. But especially when you are the CEO or the head or the owner or the main operator, whatever it is, it's often very difficult for men to be able to take, and not even just men, just anybody, to be able to take any type of criticism from you, because they will always feel like my job is in jeopardy if the head is telling me. So you need to have somebody that's kind of there. The head is gonna know. I just want you to understand that, because I had to deal with that a lot until I realized like, hey, it's just a thing that's gonna happen. So you figure out your best way around it without stepping on any toes or making anybody feel lesser than, because they're not lesser than. And everyone, again, is valued at a high regard despite how much money they have, where they are in life, who they are, who their family is, what they wear, because we don't care about what people wear, right? So next up, we have number 7. Thank you for being here if you're still watching. This is like $1 billion in value right now, because I've never seen a video on YouTube or on anything where someone has actually sat down and talked about this. And I've had to like search from person to person. I feel like I'm going crazy and I have to pray a lot. But I'm like, hey, if I can help you in that journey, I want you to learn from this. So don't over familiarize yourself. As women, we're generally and genuinely nicer. We're naturally taught to be comforters, we're nurturers, we lead with our hearts first, usually before our minds. So we may be like, I probably shouldn't help this person, but our heart is like, yeah, but you never know what they're going through. And we're like, ah. Whereas I've seen men be cutthroat, like, I don't care about him, I don't care what happens to him, he could fall off a cliff tomorrow, and I genuinely wouldn't even bat an eye. And I'm like, oh. Since we are nicer, it's often easier for people to get very comfortable and forget the position that you are at, because you are a power player in society. You are $1 million woman, like literally. And because of that, you do deserve to be treated like Beyonce. Beyonce's amazing. Taylor Swift is amazing. They're top of the top. Because of that, a lot of people, if you are nicer to them, and like if we go back to the very first thing, is treating people like they are a regular person. Sometimes, and this doesn't change the fact that you should treat people like they're a regular person, but sometimes they do come, and there are some people who start to familiarize themselves with you and get comfortable, and they forget who you are and what you do, and they take advantage of it. And so you don't want to get to the point where people are just treating you like, oh, I don't care. Because I've had instances where I had somebody that used to work for me, and we had a great relationship, and they'd hang out with my family, and we would travel together. And like, well, they worked for me, but it was always fun. Until one day, I simply was like, hey, can you help me? Like, because when I'm talking to this person, I really want you to be there because, you're part of the team. I told them that, and they, and I don't think I've ever told this story to anybody, and so I won't say specifics because it'll be very obvious to find them. But they were like, I already got everything I needed to get. Like, I don't need it. And I'm like, no. Look, this is a work trip. Like, this is a business trip. So like, if we're doing business, I need you to be a part of business. And I'm genuinely saying this in a kind tone. And they're like, no, I'm not trying to hear it. Like, you need to understand, I don't work for you. How can you tell me I work? Of course, it's a guy. If you guys can't tell, it's a guy. Guys, again, it's harder for them to take criticism from a woman. So he's like, how can you say that? And I don't work for you. We're partners. And I was like, this is not a partnership. We work together, and we work together often, but this is not a partnership. And so they end up blowing up. And this is a very, very important event for me. And they start making a scene, and my parents are there. And then they start talking crazy to my parents. And it was just a whole ordeal. And I was just like, I brought you into my house. You hung out with my family. You built a close relationship with them. We travel together. Like, we have this amazing relationship that never should have turned sour like this, simply because of, one scenario or event. And it just randomly turned sour. And I was like, oh, wow. So because of that, I realized that you have to always set expectations and set your standards. So yes, still treat people as amazing as they should be, but also tell them like, hey, I'm cool with enjoying with you in the off hours, but when it is time for business, it's time for business. When it's time for work, it's time for work. After that, we can do whatever. We can talk whatever. We can go swimming together. We can go skydiving. Like, we can do whatever, because I don't want to burn this relationship, because you're an amazing person and we have a great relationship. But if that's not something you can do and you can't handle that, I need you to understand that this may not be the place for you. This may not be the relationship for you, the job for you, the whatever it is. And that's just how you have to put it. And then you just keep going. And hopefully, there are some people that you never even have to have that conversation with, because they understand I can be cool with you, I can respect you, and I also know when the time is the time. So discernment is really key in a lot of these, is understanding, is this person worth it here? Or are they not worth it all? Or is there a better place that they can be put at? So that is number, I believe that was 7 for us. And now we're about to go to 8. 8 is probably one of my favorite ones, because this comes from a situation that I've actually never talked about publicly, but it is always be careful with the numbers. And when I say numbers, I don't even mean, don't go and spend too much money, because that's what everyone's gonna say. It's like, be frugal with your money and make sure you're saving. And yes, you should have a wonderful finance team in place, and the head of your finance team should always be you. You should never put your hands or your money in the hands completely of somebody else, to where they understand your finances better than you do. They know what you're spending money on better than you. Like, that should never be the case. But when I say be careful with the numbers, it is the fact that if you are in this ever-growing age of social media, in this ever-growing age of business, where a lot of things become more transparent, where Forbes is reporting different lists on who makes what amount and who does what, and different people are being interviewed, and podcasts are doing this, and there are people who are legitimate pocket watchers, as in they are counting every single dollar that you make, and they are trying to do the math. And if you never say a number, they're gonna look for a number, and they're gonna say, well, you say that you sold out of this many tickets, and you had 5,000 tickets, and every single ticket was $1,000. That's what people are gonna start doing. And when I say be careful with the numbers, obviously to people around you, but I want you to also be careful. And this is more important than the people around you, because if you are talking to the people around you, these people are gonna know. So these people, you have to be careful with who you entrust with this information. But the people on your team. I have had several instances where there are people who come in, they have this passion or drive, or so I believe, and they come in and they're doing great, and then they start to do the numbers. And sometimes these numbers are misconstrued, they're misskewed, or they're completely incorrect. Like they're looking at a software that's completely outdated, that hasn't been refreshed, that hasn't been updated, so it's making things look way greater than they actually are. And I'm in my head like, if these were our numbers, I'd be in Cancun every weekend. I would. But you know, you get the point. It's like I would be enjoying a much more luxurious life that I am, where I just stay home all day and it's kind of boring. I did notice that this was the case with several people that had been on my team, but I was just like, I don't want to pull them because, you know, I want to keep our relationship. I don't want to hurt the business. And so I kind of just like let it keep going. And at times, you know, well, this would be our very last thing that we get into, but what really ended up happening is people started looking at numbers that weren't real numbers. And then they start looking at you and they're like, well, if you can do this, I can do it. Maybe they can, right? I don't know whether someone can or can't do something, because I believe life is a mixture of blessings, right timing, and a lot of hard work. And so what is your blessing may not be someone else's. So there may be somebody who has one of the biggest clothing brands in the world and they're making $300 million a year, or $80 million a year, or a friend nearby you that makes $20,000 a month from their clothing brand. And you're like, well, she's making all this money from her clothing. I could start a clothing brand. I could do way better than her. Every time I tell her she should do this design, she doesn't want to listen to me. Well, I'll do it myself. And it's like, what is meant for you will be for you, and what is for someone else is also for someone else. So a lot of times when you see what's for someone else and you want it, you can't go steal that, because that's just not yours. And you can't always replicate it because it was made for them, right? So if you go to Starbucks right now and you're like, I saw this girl at my job always drinks coffee and the boss just loves her, and I hate that he always loves her because like I think I work better than her. So then you go to Starbucks the next day and you're like, yeah, can I get a coffee? And they're like, what kind? And you're like, I don't know, you know, any coffee. And so they give you any coffee and you drink it and you're like, well, this coffee was kind of bitter. I hate coffee. And then you go and you're like, how does this girl drink coffee every day? Like, that's disgusting. And the boss loves her because she's always drinking this coffee. So then you go to her and you're like, well, how do you make coffee? How do you make this coffee that you drink every day? And she's like, oh, well, I get 2 shots of espresso and it's just a regular cappuccino. Then you go the next day and you're like, listen, I want a cappuccino with 2 shots of espresso. Matter of fact, give me 3 shots of espresso because I need to be better than this girl. And then you drink it and it leaves the most bitter taste in your mouth. And you're like, this is the most disgusting drink ever. And you're like, but she drinks this every day and the boss loves her. I drank this and it's disgusting. And it's like, yeah, because it wasn't made for you. It wasn't tailored to your taste. It wasn't an acquired taste that you had. It's just not for you. It's for somebody else. And so that's the most important thing that you want to watch with the numbers, is there are people on your team, and hopefully your vetting process and your hiring process and all of that is in place so that you're able to see this. But a lot of things you do learn through experience, so it's probably going to happen. But there are people who are going to see what you're doing and they're going to say, well, I can do it better, because you're probably not a Fortune 500 company where you're making billions of dollars a year, and they understand that that's just not attainable and these systems are not attainable. So they're like, hey, you're a small business, and small business is categorized as making less than $25 million a year. Well, they say you're a small business because you make less than this, or they see the numbers and they're like, you made $18 million. What does she do that she should make $18 million? She doesn't do anything, you know? Every time I see her, she's in a different city. And it's like, well, she's in a different city because she's having a meeting, or she's filming for this, or she has to do this. But, you know, people don't see that. They just see you're in a different city. So they try to mimic what you have, but they don't have your work ethic. They don't have you, because that's a vital part, is you are you have the brain that you have, and they also just don't have your blessing. So you want to always be careful with the numbers and the people you bring around you, because you don't want to bring people that come in and say, we're making X amount, so you can afford to pay me this much. And it's like, well, what you need to understand is there are operating expenses, there are just different parts of the business. We have to pay the rent for the office, we have to pay every single person for payroll. We have to also have enough profit in the bank so that whenever and if ever anything happens, you are still taken care of for months and we can still operate. Like, this is not just, I can just go spend all this money. Like, this isn't for me, because the truth is, I'm not the business. So this money isn't even technically mine. If it was technically mine, I wouldn't give you a dime of it. But because of the fact that this is a business and this is a separate entity, you do get a portion of it because you are helping to grow this entity and make it better. I want you to remember that, because all in all, the biggest thing that you have to understand is that what is for you will be for you. A lot of this, again, you're just gonna have to learn by experience. I can tell you time and time again, not to do this, not to do this, not to do this, not to do this. One of the things I'll tell you is it's not always a good thing to hire your friends. I've hired friends and we don't talk to this day, because the day they get fired, whether or not they weren't working anymore, it just wasn't a good fit, or they got upset, whatever it was, they declare war against you. And I have friends that I fired, and then they've scammed me out of money, and they don't talk to my family. And these are people we brought close. And so there's just so many different lessons, and I could probably go on and on and on. But I want overall you to be able to take this and at least get a foot in the door, to be able to not make the mistakes I did, to be able to take what took me years to understand, you learn in a week or in a couple minutes from watching this video. And then you go and you start implementing it, and you're like, wow, this actually worked. This actually changed things. So I hope this helped you. For those of you who are watching and you're like, well, Kelly, I'm not a millionaire. Well, yet. That's what I always say to everything, yet. And the last thing I'm gonna say is I just want you to let me pray for you and your success, because I like to do that. And I just hope that you accept it. And if you don't accept it, well, you know, I'm gonna be hurt, but it'll be okay. And know that I'm still praying for you. So God, I ask that you bless and protect each and every single person that is watching this video. I ask that you allow them to prosper in every area of their lives, that you allow their family to prosper, that you allow their relatives to prosper, their close friends to prosper, that you allow any enemy of progress to get out of their lives, whether that's temptation, whether that's a distraction, or whether that is a literal and physical person. We ask that you allow them to be able to thrive again in every area, that you forgive them for their sins, that you are able to help them to be able to do well in whatever they put their minds to. And you said life and death is in the power of the tongue. So we ask that anything that they speak over their lives, and anything that they want to happen shall happen. And that when it comes time for them to deal with these difficulties, that it will be something as simple as done, and not something that leads to a lot of stress and a lot of depression and a lot of them being upset. We just ask that that is not their portion, and that you continue to cover them and protect them. And again, thank them for watching this video. In Jesus' name, amen. I hope y'all enjoyed that. That was a really long one. Anyways, y'all have a great day, and thank you for everything. Mwah! Okay. Dang, that was a very long video.